Hello YouTube, Captain Mac here, and what you were looking at is the Hawker 850XP from Carenado, and you're looking at a menu at the top of the screen because it didn't want to go away for some reason. Anyway, what we're going to be doing today is actually going to be a flight tutorial, or a full flight tutorial. It will involve pretty much all of the aspects of flight planning and control of this aircraft. The only thing it will not include will be an ILS approach, and that's just based on the route that I've chosen today. But I will go over the procedures for an ILS approach anyway, just so that everybody's tracking on how that works. And really, it's very simple. It's the same as it is in every other airplane on the planet, so not a problem there. Before we dive right in, I do want to say a very sincere and heartfelt thank you to my friend Kino. He had asked that I do a tutorial on this aircraft, and then very generously donated it to me so that I would be able to record the tutorial. So I just want to say thank you to you, sir. I very much appreciate it. I really enjoy flying this airplane. It's a lot of fun, and it makes an outstanding addition to my hangar. So thank you very much, and I hope that this tutorial meets all of your expectations. And if for any reason it does not, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I will absolutely make corrections. Now, that being said, there's some quirks to this airplane, and I have a couple of minor complaints. Really, my chief complaint is that the documentation on this thing sucks. It is terrible. There's very little information at all to begin with. I mean, there's really very little information. There's more than enough to fly the aircraft, don't get me wrong, but there's nothing that lays out where buttons and switches are, and in some cases, even after I've gone through the procedures on this flight we're going to do, I've actually done probably 5 or 6 times from start to finish, every single step in the checklist, just to be prepared for this video. And I'm going to tell you, I'm still going to have to hunt and peck for some of the buttons or switches, and there's some of them that I simply cannot find. Try as I might, I have been absolutely 100% unable to find a few buttons or switches on here, and so I'm not sure if I'm just overlooking them or what, but there you have it. And then, like I said, there's a few little quirks on it as well, including the function of the autopilot, the function of the FMC, and so on. So we're going to go through all of that, but we're going to get the best we can out of it. And ultimately, I will tell you this, and I can't say how it speaks for representation of the aircraft in the real world, but I can say as far as the flight simulation world, once you get the hang of these few little quirks and stuff, you can hop into this thing, you can fire it up really quickly, and you can have a lot of fun with it. It is a fun little aircraft to fly, especially, to take this thing into small strips and stuff like that, like we're going to be doing today. I think I already threw the graphic up down there, but graphic up down there. Anyway, we're going to fly from Page, Arizona, which is where we're at right now, into Sedona, Arizona. And you're going to see as we depart here, I do have photoreal scenery laid out, and I know it's not the best looking for towns and stuff like that, but since we are literally right at the rim of the Grand Canyon, it'll look fantastic for that. Okay. So when you hop on into your sim, first thing you're going to want to do, and I'm telling you, you're going to want to do this right away. Hit the shift key plus the number 8 and pull this guy up. And you need to do one of two things. You need to either click ready for taxi or click cold and dark cockpit. And I'm going to tell you why. Because when you first hop into this thing, the battery's going to be on, and a bunch of electrical stuff is going to be on, but that's it. Just the battery. And I'm going to tell you right now, it takes about 2.5 minutes for that battery to die. So, unless you know exactly where you're going and what you're doing, I highly recommend you hit shift plus the number 8 on the top of your keyboard there, not on your keypad, and select cold and dark or ready for taxi, whichever you prefer. Of course, we are in cold and dark. I'll click it again just to make sure, but Pretty sure we were already there. Let's see. I'm gonna just go through these. That's one shift. These are just holding down the shift key. These are your 2D pop-ups here. I do not use these, at least not in this fashion. I do pop them up a lot in the aircraft to show to you guys, but I wanted to get to this. So you've got your VC windows, instruments, reflections. Now reflections can take a pretty heavy load on frame rate, so if you don't have a strong system, you can always click that off. Static elements, this is for when it's parked on the ground. Obviously, by clicking that, you can see I've got the wheel chocks out there, and the oh, come on, brain function, the little cones out there, and so on. And then you can open the passenger door from here. I do not open the passenger door from here. I like to do it from the inside or use the Shift E key. So that was, what was that? That was Shift 6. Shift plus 6 pops that up. Shift plus 7 pops this little guy up, which is a little, it just pops up the same little windows that you get from pushing Shift in the other keys. So there you go. And then Shift 8 was this guy once again, and then Shift 9 doesn't actually do anything. It's something to do with the nav database. I'm doing it a bunch of times trying to show you. When you update the nav data on this, which I use Navigraph, when you first load in, that little window that was popping up a bunch of times while I was hitting Shift 9, actually what that's doing is that's refreshing the database. It'll pop up and it'll take a couple minutes to refresh it. Okay, I'm going to pause here for just 1 second because I want to go over some of the documentation really quick and just show you what I'm talking about with my issues with that, and then we're going to dive in. We're going to get the fun stuff going. Okay, so we're looking at the manual here, and I'm actually going to go through a few of these real quick, and I just want to point out some of the things I'm talking about. First of all, this is your operation of the ProLine 21, which is the FMC and all of its supporting components, such as the PFD, MFD, and so on. Okay, but I just want to give an example of my issue with this here. Okay, and you're going to see this when we go in to do the FMC. All right. The first thing we need to do when we go into the FMC is what? Position initialization, right? And I'm going to show you how to do it, but it took me a while to figure it out because this thing doesn't tell you how to do it. Here we are right here, basic operation of the CDU. That's the computer display unit or control display unit, right? Okay. And we come down here and it goes right into creating a flight plan. That's it. And creating a flight plan is not the hard part on this thing, obviously. All right, so while there is information in here, a lot of this you kind of got to figure out on your own. Okay, so we'll go, well, you don't necessarily have to because a lot of it I figured out for you, which is sort of the idea here. And then some of it you'll have to figure out on your own. So there's one of my issues with the documentation. This entire thing is 13 pages long. Okay, so that also tells you how not quite so in-depth it is. Something to keep in mind. Okay, let's jump over to the next one here. This is something I actually really like. Okay, and this is referring to the flight guidance system, or what you more typically hear referred to as the MCP, the mode control panel. Okay, and while this thing is only 5 pages long and there's not a whole lot in here, it does have this chart in here which I think is really good because it lays out some very basic things for you, but helps you to understand not only the difference between armed and active, which we're going to see up there, armed being gray and active being green, but what's actually going on with that particular mode. So if you're not familiar with with the different modes in the autopilot, for example, if you're not familiar with what flight level change actually is, even though, you know, obviously we've explained that on this channel, but this gives it for you. And this thing's 2 pages long, and you could easily print this out and just stick it right next to your desk, and then you'd have this as a reference. So I do like this. This is really fantastic. Let's go over here. This is the normal procedures. Now, let's just start with the fact that this is literally pictures of the real manual, the real checklist. Okay, this is right out of the pilot's operating handbook for this aircraft. That's what this is. Which, now your first thought is, oh, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Except that they skipped things, number one. And number two, when you go through like the normal procedures, this is literally just a checklist. You are expected to know where everything is, and every page is like this. That's all this thing is it's photographs of the pilot's operating handbook. Okay, maybe just a little lazy, if you ask me. I kind of disagree with that, but there's nothing to actually walk you through the aircraft, okay? And to a certain extent, there's quite a bit going on in this airplane, all right? If I go up here and we go to the start checks, okay, if you haven't actually taken the time to look through this thing, you don't know what the engine computers are, okay? You don't know where the start power is, and I'm going to show you why, because start power, there's 3 buttons there, all right? Anyway, the point is you don't know any of that stuff. They didn't take the time to write a manual on this. They took pictures of the pilot's operating handbook, just the checklist portion, and said, here, go figure it out. I have an issue with that. I disagree with it. Let's move on. Performance tables. Nothing against the performance tables, except that I went through every one of these, and they're all the takeoff performance tables are for flap 0. Every single one. Those are the ones they put in here. Flap 0, flap 0, flap 0, flap 0, flap 0, and so on it goes. Now, I have a hard time believing that the only performance tables available for this aircraft are for takeoffs without flaps. So I have an issue with that as well. And I have to pull my takeoff speeds from these tables. Now, I don't know, maybe there's one. Nope, see, that's it. They're all flap 0. I wanted to make sure that I actually scrolled through it. So it goes all the way to table 7. That's flap 0 as well. And then flap 0 takeoff decision speed. And what do we got here? N1 reference values. And I'm not even using all of these, to be honest with you, because it's a flight sim. And we'd be here for days trying to figure this out. But N1 reference values, you know, these tell you this is how you can set up what your N1 reference should be, okay? And I'm actually going to let the FMS do that, which is it's not that difficult. This stuff just is stuff you normally calculate, but the FMC does a lot of it for you. The point I'm getting at here is, seriously, same thing. You took pictures of the book, right? That's what it is. High-speed cruise, pictures of the book. So why didn't you take all the pictures? I mean, you were already lazy where you couldn't make a manual. You were so lazy you could take pictures of every page? All right. I think everybody gets the point here. There's a lack of documentation. That's what it boils down to. It's a lack of documentation. They do have an emergency procedures section as well. I didn't pop that up. I don't see the point. I think we understand where I'm coming from here. So I just want to cover that on the documentation as we get ready to go forward. I took the checklist and I typed them out myself so that I actually have a checklist. And then, of course, I screwed it up in a couple places, so it's going to make it fun as we bounce around. Okay, so let's hop back over to the aircraft there. All right, here we are on the flight deck. This is where we belong, of course, and as you can see, we are in a state of cold and dark, or a cold and dark state, or whatever. Everything is off. Let's go with that. So just a quick look around here. Let me just back out just a little bit without getting caught up in whatever that thing was. One issue I've had with all aircraft in FSX is technically, this would be my view. I think I've talked about this before. This would be my approximate view in the aircraft. Zoomed in at 1%. I don't think I'm zoomed that far in, to be honest with you. But 1.0 on the zoom is supposed to represent your normal eye view, our normal eye focus, whatever. Okay, but you know, it seems like, I don't know how to put it. It just, I mean, literally, this is about where we're going to be in our view, so we can see a little bit, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that, but I mean, you're literally like always right on top of the back. Anyway, okay, I'm done complaining about it. It's actually a pretty nice layout in here. I do like the flight deck. I haven't done a lot of comparisons. Actually, I had a little bit of trouble finding some pictures of the real aircraft on the internet. I did find some, but I don't know. I didn't spend a lot of time comparing them. How about that? You can pop away the yokes, which I think is fantastic because, of course, in the real world you wouldn't do that, but you know, it's a lot harder to see around in here. But I really, really like this thing. Those are supposed to be down. That's part of the checklist anyway. But I like the layout in here. It's a really neat looking aircraft. For the most part, it's intuitive for the most part. And by that, what I mean is, if you spend any time in complex aircraft being, multi-engine that require, checklist startup procedures and stuff like that, then you'll have a decent idea of what goes on in this aircraft. But there's a lot of different terminology, and the placement of a lot of things is not so intuitive. And then it's even less so when some of those things you can't even find them because either Carenado didn't model them, which is fine except a little frustrating, or I just can't find them. So there you have it. The first thing we need to do when we hop in here, and this is one of those documentation things that is literally covered in a tiny little box that says start the APU. It doesn't tell you how to do it. It doesn't really give you any information on it. It just says start the APU. Okay, let's start the APU. Hop on up here. Let's see, we got alternators, engine start, that's not our APU. Battery emergency, isolate battery 1, battery 2, extra battery, blah, blah, blah. And of course, if you continue to go through this, you will find that there's absolutely nothing on here that says anything at all whatsoever about the APU. Okay. Maybe it doesn't have an APU because there are some of these, the Hawker 850s, that don't have an APU. Well, let's do ground power then, because ground power is an option, right? Okay, external power on. Sweet. What's going on? I don't see anything. Now, supposedly, with the external power on, you should be able to turn on the battery and then you have power and you're good to go. Okay, except that when I tried that, everything died in about 2.5 minutes. Everything shut down, and once it shuts down, that's it. You have to reload the aircraft if you want to be able to start it. So, no dice on the external power. Why am I doing this way? Somebody's probably saying, okay, let's get to it. The point is it took me a while, and this is where even some halfway tolerable documentation would have made a big difference in telling me that the APU startup is behind the captain. That's right. It's behind the captain. There's the captain's seat. There's the captain's windshield, windscreen, whatever. This is the APU control panel. And you might have seen when I was over here and I turned the APU fire test switch pop up. Anyway, there is no checklist procedure for starting the APU. Zero. Can't find it anywhere. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying we don't have one. So let's just start with an APU fire test. Push it. Okay, it's good. What's next? Well, here's the master start switch. We know it's not on fire, so left click once. It's on, but we need to start it. Left click again. Nope, not working. Right click. Nothing. I'm not getting anything. Okay. I don't know why. But you can hear it spinning up. Hear that going on? Let's hop outside. Now, interestingly, it's no louder outside than it is inside. But it's spinning up. You can hear it now, right? The switch is supposed to go up one more, too. Get over here. But it's not for some reason. Anyway, it says ready to load. Flip the generator switch up. That just resets it. Now, here's the next issue that I have. And I messed with this and messed with this. Couldn't get it figured out. Let's go over here to our overhead. There is no gen switch over here, right? But by switching the generator on here, I'm not getting any power. Okay, let's flip our bleed air on real quick because we're going to need it eventually. So, I figured, okay, let's try turning the battery on, which I did. And then I turned my alternators on, hoping that, because an alternator does what? Charges the battery, right? Hoping that the APU generator is charging the alternators and keeping the battery charged or something like that. I don't know. Make sure gens 1 and 2 are both reset and then on. That's what I did, and I was able to go through the full startup like that. Let's turn our beacon on one. And nothing died on me. So I think we're good to go on that. Alright. So again, there's your APU stuff behind the pilot there. Okay. Which means, of course, now we can hop into, I say that of course a lot, don't I? Which means we can hop into our before start checklist. And this is a long one, folks. But we're going to go through it as quickly as we can because, of course, my videos are always loud anyway. So the first thing we do is we check the cabin. We check the overwing emergency. Of course, we could see from the outside that it was still in place. We're good there. There you go. There's your cough for this one. The next thing on the list is the refuel switches. This is one of those things I've searched and searched and searched and searched, and I cannot find the refuel switches. So if somebody knows where the refuel switches are in this aircraft, please point them out to me because, again, I've really looked and I can't find them, and I've scoured this thing, okay? So what I've put in place here, however, is to load fuel, because in order to load fuel, we're going to have to go to aircraft, fuel and payload, all right? And then our change fuel here. Now, we do not need 9,994 pounds of fuel. We need 2,283 plus captain's fuel, which will put us at about, I'm actually going to add about 2,000 in captain's fuel because the, I'm going to add 1,000. Yeah, so we'll go with 3,300. So I'm going to put everything at 0 first, just for myself. So 3,300 would be 16 and a half aside, so 1,650. You like how fast I did that math in my head? I'm smart. There we go, 3,300. Man, I am good. Okay, and it's going to burn through some of that right now. So you've all seen this before. I don't need to walk anybody through this. However, before you depart this screen, do yourself a favor. Grab this number right here. Gross weight. You're gonna need it because the FMC does not give it to you. So in our case it's 19,980. We're gonna need that when it comes time to calculate our V-speed. So grab that number while you're here. We're good to go on that. Don't bother putting your flight plan in up here because unlike other Carenado systems, maybe it's just me, but it doesn't hop up. It doesn't pop up inside the FMC, so don't even bother with it. Okay. So now that's our fuel because, and again, I'm not saying the refuel switches aren't in here, but I'm pretty sure the refuel switches aren't in here, okay? So let's move on. Circuit breakers need to be set. I like to take a peek at my circuit breakers, but of course, while actually very well modeled, the circuit breaker switches were very well modeled. These look like crap in my opinion. I do appreciate that you can read all of these, and in fact, I had hoped that maybe 1 or 2 of them was functional, since there were a couple things I simply could not find, but unfortunately that's not the case. So there's your circuit breakers. They look really nice, but they don't actually do anything. And this is a small cabin, or a small flight deck in this aircraft. Safety equipment checked and stowed. Well, technically the safety equipment is, here's our fire extinguisher and our O2 and all that good stuff, and we can't really do anything with it, so there you have it, checked and stowed. Pump handle stowed. Not sure what this one was. There's a couple of handles. This one's a hydraulic handle, and then emergency hydraulic pump. This is the only handle, and I don't know why this says basically the same thing down here. Maybe they're talking about this handle, but either way, you can't do anything with this or this, and we'll get to this one later anyway. So that's the only pump handle I can find. So there we have it. Landing gear is down. That's this guy right here, which he is. Brakes set. It's got this massive... Let's go to the other side here. Look at the size of this thing, man. Boy, they were not playing around with this thing. So parking brake is on, so we're good there. Trim set. Now, depending on what takeoff we're going to do, and I'll probably forget that I showed this and show it to you again later. So if we're going to use a flaps 15, this is where we want our trim set at. Look at that, 15, and it's this box. If we're going to do flaps 25, it's the next little box up, and then obviously flaps 35. So we're going to do flaps 15 takeoff, so that's where our trims are going to need to be right there. Let's see, thrust reverse levers need to be stowed or off. That's these guys, they're down obviously. HP cocks, this is one of the ones that actually drove me nuts for quite some time. Let's hop over here. And again, where a manual would really come in handy. Okay, so these are the LP cocks here. Stop laughing. These are the HP cocks, but originally these were up. See? So unless you come down to this view, you can't even see this word. Okay, these are the HP cocks. I don't know what it stands for. I would have called them the fuel switches, you know, but anyway, so here's the HP cocks. Those need to be off, as well as the LP cocks. The levers need to be up, and you can't actually do anything with these two. You can with these two, but their default position is where they actually need to be, so I would leave those alone. Okay, at this point the battery of course should be on, which it is, and we actually need to hop up top here. So battery's on. Battery isolate needs to be to norm. That's this one right here. It's currently norm, so we're good. I do like that on most of these you have the little tool tips or whatever you call them. That's actually helpful, because in some cases it's really hard to tell which position the switch is in. The bus tie open enunciator, check that it illuminates. It does indeed. And we're going to leave the bus tie open for now. Battery volts, check that they're 23 or higher. So here's your DC volts. Here's your, what is this? There's amps. That's battery volts, right? Come on, brain function. Yeah. According to this, we're at 0. No. This should be battery volts here. DC volts. This guy here. This is amps. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, this is our volts right here. So if we got more voltage because the APU is running blasey, blasey, blasey. You guys get the point. You're supposed to check the battery volts. There we go. And I know I'm probably fumbling around. Forgive me. Fire extension switches need to be off. That's these guys down here. And it's... yeah, you know, it's fire extension switches off, and then the little tooltip is extinguisher bottle discharged no. It would just help if the little tooltip said off. But there you go. That's the off position, in case anybody's wondering. If you're not on, if you are on external power, you have to close the bus tie switch. We're not on external power, so I'm not worried about that. And I think I turned that off. I did. Standby inverter needs to be armed. This is where the flow goes kind of, you know, out the window. Well, no, not really, because we're kind of going across here. So this is standby inverter. So click it once and that arms it. That's what we want right there. And then inverters need to be on and checked. I don't know what you do to check them, but they're like a reset switch. So I just push both of those, and then we can turn the no smoking switch to auto. Might as well. Air conditioning as required. So you've got your main air valve here, your flight deck valve here, and then you hop over here, and this is your cabin flood and your cabin floor, which I think those are lights actually there, but then up here it says they're fans, so I don't know. But anyway, this one's definitely fan, and then whatever pressing auto is, I don't know. I think it's supposed to be pressurization. So we want it on auto, which is down here. Yeah? Okay. So we're good on that. Let's see what's next. Radio 1 and 2 master switches. This is one of those that actually took a little while to find, strangely enough, but they're right here. Radio 1 is this guy, and radio 2 is this guy, and I'll zoom down there so that you can see them. So those are your radio master switches right there, and this is them in the off position. We're going to get to this eventually, but you can't do anything with any of these switches or these switches here, so just keep that in mind. Transponders need to be on. This one I find a little bit odd, because the only place to do anything with the transponder, now there is an ident key, I think, up here. Yeah, there's the ATC ident key, but there's nothing up here for the transponder, and there's really nothing on here for the transponder. So not really sure what they want you to do with that, except that, you know, maybe you set your transponder code in here, but we actually do that later on, so not sure what to do there. You guys know, you tell me. Let's see where we at. I gotta find my place again. This is a long checklist. Okay, passenger supply oxygen needs to be on. That's this one, cabin oxygen. I'm not sure what the therapeutic oxygen is for, but neither one of these does anything. However, the next item on the checklist is just oxygen supply on, which is yours, and this one does work. So I don't know, rotate it, whatever. I don't know why make one of them work and not the other. Just my opinion. Left hand mask and mic, you need to check those. they're connected here and they're behind the seat and you can't actually do anything with them, so there's nothing to actually check. Let's see, cabin high datum as required. Now it took me a while to find this switch as well. I finally found it, but I don't have anything to tell me whether or not it's required. It's this guy right here. You can turn it on, you can turn it off, but I think I know what cabin high datum might mean. I think it has to do with being at an airport at a high elevation, but I don't know that for certain. I've never actually heard the term. And the checklist item is as required. Again, documentation would be nice. I'm going to turn that on real quick. We're going to get there anyway. EGPWS switches deselect. Okay. What does that mean? This is the ground proximity warning system, and these are the overrides is what they are. And those are right up under here. GPWS. And you can actually select these. So this is the flap override, terrain override, glide slope, and so on. This is selected. Now, the reason I clicked them all is because, see, they light up. Well, they look lit up like this too. Okay, so you just got to hold it over there and see. It says it's off, so we're good to go on that. And we're initializing it. That's kind of cool. I never noticed that before. I never paid attention to it. Moving on. Let's see. So now we got to test the MWS. And you can see MWS is right here. There's no test switch, and I've looked around. Now, maybe there's one up top when we do those tests. We'll see, and maybe I just missed it. But you can't do anything with this here. There's no function for this button, this switch, or this button here. So, AHRS mode needs to be normal. That is this guy here, which is normal, and this guy here, which is normal. You can't change the mode, so it doesn't really matter. But there you have it. Transfer switches need to be extinguished. The only transfer switches I find are left-hand transfer and right-hand transfer, but you can't do anything with the switches on these. They're not functioning in any way, so, and they look to me like they're not extinguished. They look illuminated, so kind of a pain there, but it is what it is. I think that's supposed to be auxiliary. Auxiliary hydraulic, I put AUD instead of AUX. Auxiliary hydraulic system handle needs to be fully in. I'm assuming this guy right here. This is the auxiliary hydraulic system. This is a handle. The handle is in because you can see it's a pull handle. So I'm assuming that we're good to go on that. But again, there's this looking pump looking or whatever the heck this thing is here. I don't know but you get the point. Okay. So we're good on that. You can't do anything with it anyway, so I wouldn't worry about it. Dump valve. This one was a bit of a pain to find because it's not written very clearly, but it's actually this guy right here. So I'll zoom down here for you as I fly around. There's your dump valve. Now it doesn't have a tooltip on it, but you can see that open is here, which means obviously up is closed, and it needs to be in the closed position or shut position. So there it is. Barrel pressure, it says as required. Okay, well, I'm going to be setting that later, so I don't know why it's on this part of the checklist. Cat 2 switch. I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and I didn't find a Cat 2 switch. I didn't find it anywhere. So if there's a Cat 2 switch and I missed it, please point it out to me, because I actually spent like, I don't know, 45 minutes slowly scanning every single button and switch I could find in here, and I didn't find a Cat 2 switch. Now, it does say if installed, so I'm assuming it's not installed. Pressurization, we need to set that, and to do that, we're going to zoom all the way over here, and I'll drop down. I know my flying around inside the aircraft isn't so great. Here's our pressurization, and when you hold the little doohickey over it here, it says cabin altitude goal. That's a little ambiguous to me. I know that when you fly the Beech 1900, you can clearly see what constitutes the cabin and what constitutes outside elevation and all that, and there's more than one knob. That's not the case on this one. This is the only option you have, is the cabin altitude goal. Okay, well, our cabin altitude goal is going to be 800 feet, and we're just going to keep it right as, there you go, 801 feet. This doesn't do this doesn't do anything. So, okay, I mean, it should technically, but it doesn't. So there you have it. That's how we set our pressurization. And then it says right side panel check. You can't do anything with anything over here except a little radio. So nothing to check over there. And then right hand mask and mic, again, they're behind the seat. I don't know how I accidentally clicked that, but there you go. They're behind the seat and you can't actually get to them, so it is what it is. Moving on. So next we're going to do our overhead tests. And when you hop up here, you're like, oh, where are those at? Those are all test switches. So, and I don't see, what was that thing called? The MWS. I don't see an MWS test switch up here. So, we need to go through all of these. Annunciators. All we're doing is make sure everything lights up. It does. Okay? These are the stall warnings. That's the shaker on number 1. Shaker on number 2. Okay, now I'm gonna have to click these and then zip down here real quick because this is where we're gonna hear an audible warning, but we'll also get a a light down here that we don't get when we test the annunciator switch. So here's one. There's our light right there. Engine 1 fire, and then same thing on engine 2. There you have it. Let's see. We push that. I don't know what it's actually testing. It just says HP air over OVHT, which I'm assuming is overheat. But I don't see any lights popping on anywhere. I've even looked down here real quick. I didn't see anything happen. So not entirely certain what that's supposed to be. And again, lack of documentation doesn't really give me any answers. Ice detection, that pops up right here. So that tells us, yep, ice detected. Okay, we're good on that. Cabin altitude, that's a very loud warning. That's the warning for the cabin altitude, and that has to do with pressurization. Now this test takes a minute, but we're going to go ahead and go through it anyway. This is all of your ground proximity warning systems, and it goes through the whole thing, so let's go ahead and listen.
Flight slope. Pull up. Wind shear. Wind shear. Wind shear. Too low. Terrain. Sink rate. Don't sink. Too low. Gear. Too low. Flaps. Bank angle. Minimums. 2,500. 1,000. 500. 400. 300. 200. 100. 50. 40. 30. 20. 10.
Told you it went through all of them. Alright, so our ground proximity is working well. VMO and MMO 1 and 2. As far as I can tell, they don't actually do anything. So AOA, not sure what that is, and CellCal doesn't seem to do anything. So there we have it. Those are our overhead tests. Here's 2 coughs for you. And so next is the glare shield, which is this guy right here. So I'm trying to think of the best way to go into this. I'm going to do these in a little while, but let's do these on the glare shield for now. Okay, so for the most part, our switches have, or our knobs have 2 sections. One in blue and one in yellow or green. And what that is now it's not all of them, okay? Speed is a funky, I guess it's just the one, right? There are other knobs that have the blue and yellow as well, just not over here. So let's go across this really quick. Flight director switch, left and right hand side, you only need to press one of them. Course knobs, left and right hand side, you can use either one of them. Vertical speed, vertical navigation does not work properly, at least as far as I can tell, but we'll look at that a little bit later. Flight level change, nav button, heading mode, approach switch, half bank, which I never use, but there you go. Speed switch, or speed knob, that's your speed adjustment knob. Go over that in a little bit. Heading, obviously, heading mode, or heading select knob. Altitude switch, altitude selector, yaw damper, autopilot, autopilot disconnect, whatever CPL is doesn't work. Okay, that's everything that's on there. I don't normally go through it like that, but there you have it. Okay, couple of things. First of all, we're going to change our altitude. Okay, we're going to fly at 20,000 feet for this flight. If I use the blue knob, or to me, I just call it the blue knob. It's the same knob, but this would be the inner knob, and then the yellow would be on the outer knob. But for simplicity, the inner knob has a blue ring and the outer knob has a yellow ring. So if I call it the blue knob, I'm referring to the inner ring, where or the inner knob where it gets a blue ring on it. I think that makes sense to everybody. So on the inner knob with the blue ring, if I rotate that, I get 1,000-foot increments. On the outer ring with the yellow knob, I get 100-foot increments. Okay, so obviously if I want to get to 20,000 feet quick, yeah, that's just telling me that we're close. We were bypassing an altitude. But anyway, up to 20,000 feet, there we go. If I had to go 20,500, then obviously I would use the yellow or outer knob to select that. Now, on the speed knob here, sorry I had my microphone away from my face for a second. Speed knob's a funky little guy because there is technically an inner and outer knob. You can see that, right? But it doesn't let me actually select that. So if I go on here, you see that was 5 knots, right? But now watch the next one. Okay, now it's going to do 10 knots. And then it starts going in 10 knot increments, right? I don't know why. But if I can get where the little hand pops up but not the ring, okay, little hand, no ring, I can get 1 knot at a time. Okay, and this one will randomly go like, see, it just went 5 and then up to 15, and it's very weird. I don't know what they were doing with this thing. I just don't know what they were doing with it. So if you want single digits, as soon as that ring pops up, you're on 10 knots. Well, not this time. Now we're on 16 knots, or single knots. But see, now it jumped to 10. You get where I'm coming from? So the only time I've been able to get it to consistently go 1 knot at a time is when I get the little hand to pop up like that. Okay, but I do not get the ring to pop up. Now, my recommendation, there's no point in messing with this thing right now, because really the best way to climb is to use the flight change mode, and that's going to set the speed for you automatically. So there you have it. Now if you push the center of the knob, it's supposed to change between indicated airspeed and Mach. Alright, so whether or not it does, I haven't actually tried it. Let's try it. Yeah, it doesn't seem to. Right click, left click, doesn't seem to do anything. Oh, that's because I'm clicking the heading mode, idiot. There we go. I was clicking on the heading knob. If you click the heading knob, the center of the heading knob, it jumps the heading bug to your current heading. So, yeah, click on the center of it. There you can see it. Well, maybe you can't see it. There it is, 0.28 Mach. If you click it again, it goes back to the number. So, at least that works, because in the field there, whew, I can't get that thing to work properly to save my life. Alright, so again, I don't see any point in setting the speed because the flight level change mode, okay, is going to automatically adopt the speed you're at when you press it, and you'll see that when we do it. So the best way to deal with it, since you would have to change this again anyway, whereas in some aircraft, I believe the Dash 8 is this way, I can set the speed here, and then when I hit flight level change, it will go with the speed that I set. That's not what happens here. It automatically adopts the speed you're at as the speed for flight level change. Okay. Everything else pretty self-explanatory. Nav mode is for either flying the FMS or flying a VOR, whatever, depending on which mode you're on over here. Right now we're on FMS, obviously. Heading mode, self-explanatory. Approach mode, self-explanatory. Altitude hold. There's 2 types. We're on altitude select right now, which is good. That's where we want to be. Yaw damper and autopilot, those don't come on until after you take off, obviously. And then flight director is pretty straightforward. So there is our glare shield check, and obviously the main thing we're doing is setting our altitude on the glare shield. Next it says roof panel check. Okay, I don't know what we're checking. I don't know if I'm supposed to look at this thing or make sure this thing hasn't fallen down or what, but there's your roof panel. So yep, we've checked the roof panel. We're good to go on that. These work, but they only come straight down, so I think that was a waste of time. They should have made it so you could slide them forward and actually block sunlight, but hey, what do I know? Moving on, autopilot and yaw damper check. You can press them. There's yaw damper, there's autopilot off, yaw damper off. We're good to go. If you hit the altitude button, it will automatically jump to the altitude you're at, just so you know. Okay, so if you hit this button right here, it jumps to the altitude you're at. That's not what we want it to do. We want altitude select mode, which by just rotating this, it automatically went to that. Electric trim test. Now, I don't know if there's supposed to be a button for this, a little switch or something like that. I haven't been able to find one. There's 4 little switches up here that are not very clear on what they are. That's the FSU1 bat power. I don't actually know what that is, and I can't find it in the documentation. It doesn't mean it's not there, but I did not read line for line, word for word. I'm going to be honest with you. But they're just switch aft. It's a test switch. I believe it has to do with the fire detectors, because you switch that one and it's on smoke now. So not really sure what that's for, but I haven't found anything on the checklist that explicitly addresses those. And they're clearly not the electric trim test. So here's how I test my electric trim. I have a button on my yoke, that a rocker switch that goes up and down, and so down is to trim up and up is to trim down, and so I just press it a few times, and as long as the thing moves, the electric trim is working as far as I'm concerned. So that's how I test electric trim. Next is FMS and bugs. Now comes the fun part. Now I've got a nice little view down here for FMS, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to stay up here and pop this up for you. And we're going to start getting into the quirks. Couple of things to pop up these windows is along the top bar here. See the little finger pops up, but in here it does nothing. I'm clicking right now. So if you want to pop these up, you click on the top bar, and the same for the CDUs down here. And then if you want to move them, don't click the top to move them. You got to click in the center somewhere to move them like that. Okay. First things first. As you can see, my Navigraph is updated. So today is, what is today? July, I'm going to look at the date over here. Today's the 18th, so this is good for a couple more days, and then we'll have to update it. So we're good on that. That's your first page. And then there's no flight plan. I get that. We can hit clear delete over here. And then we go to position initialization, and it gets weird right from the start. So normally you would think you go to page 2, you grab one of these positions, but it doesn't let you put them in the scratch pad when I click on them. So you go back to page 1, you can't click on anything here, you can't click on this one, nothing goes in the scratch pad. But if I put in, see we've got nothing, this is all zeros, but if I put in the airport, KPGA, it's going to put the location of the airport right here. See that? And that's off just a little bit from this, and it's, I don't know why it's off as much as it is, because I only moved the airplane like 4 feet. But it doesn't let us select that to put it down here. Okay, we cannot change the set position. Apparently this is the set position now. Okay, I haven't had any problems with it navigating, so I'm assuming that this is our set position. I can put a reference waypoint in here if I want. I'm not going to. Oh, excuse me, I got a cough again. And I can't do anything with these. I just can't. Okay, this is the current FMS position, GPS 1 and 2. You can't do anything with those. So it is what it is. There you have it. So let's go to flight plan. It keeps our origin airport in there. So let's take a look at our destination, which is KSEZ. There it is. And we're good to go. Now, let me show you the flight plan here real quick. Here's our flight plan, direct to PGA. I'm not going to include PGA in there because it's literally, it's like right over here. You can't really quite see it here. Where are you at? We're almost on top of it. I can't remember where it's at. But anyway, we're like right on top of the VOR. Okay, because the VOR is on the airport. So I'm not going to put that in there. So this is kind of weird. I should be able to put in Victor 293 to GCN. So via Victor 293 to GCN. And then go to the next page and carry on. But every time I've tried to do that, when I go to the next page, it doesn't show what I put in here. It doesn't show it. So save yourself the hassle. Click on next page and put it in right here. So it's Victor 293. So V293. And it doesn't do anything. Why? What's going on? It's ridiculous. It's annoying. So here's what I found out. Put in GCN. Okay. Well, now it's not putting that one in there either. Maybe you have to put it here first. So let's go GCN. Again, quirky. Last time I did this, it wouldn't take on this page. GCN. Let's put Victor 293. And now it doesn't want to take that, right? So you see where I'm coming from here? So go to the next page, and that's not here. Okay? Why isn't that here? It doesn't make any sense, does it? Clear that out. Okay? And then let's go, and just to make it quicker, let's just copy GCN, go to the next page, go GCN, and then now it says direct. Alright. So for whatever reason, I guess you have to put it in here first, but you can't put the via in there, you can't put the airway in there. And then you put it in here, and now I can put the airway in, right? But watch what it does. Victor 293, and now it's going to get rid of that and say discontinuity, right? And now I'm remembering why I put in PGA. So here's what we actually have to do. And I know this was a roundabout way of getting to this, but it's easier just to show you. So let's go back here, and instead of having GCN in here, we're going to put PGA, which is kind of silly because we're on top of it, but anyway, PGA, and then Victor 293 to GCN. Put that in there, and we're good to go. Now I can just carry on. So from there, it's going to be Victor 257, and it's going to automatically give me the discontinuity. And we're going to take that all the way to KC, K-A-C-E-E. So K-A-C-E-E, and there we go. And then from KC, we're going Victor 291 to FLG. There's nothing in between, so alternatively, instead of doing the flight plan this way, typically you would put in the airway like this to a specific waypoint. If there's like, you know, 3 or 4 different waypoints in there, it'll just include those. But there are no waypoints in between these. So that's method 1, and then you could also just go to the legs page and you can see GCN BISOP. So there was a couple of waypoints. Actually, BISOP was written on here, just so you know. It's on the flight plan. Navho, KC, and then KSEZ. What I can do is I want to go to FLG, which is the VOR at Flagstaff, and I want that before Sedona. Okay. Now, why it pops fulling up, I don't know, because fulling is like, if I'm not mistaken, way far away from where I'm headed. But anyway, FLG, and it puts it in there. So always make sure that when you type in a waypoint, that you click on the one you want it to come before. So we want it to come before KSEZ, so there we go. Now, next quirk, click legs to go back to the start. You can see it shows 28,000 feet for all of them, and it's always going to do that. That's the default. So we're going to be flying at 20,000 feet. I need to change that. So if I go slash 20,000, I can put that in there, and there we go. Okay. Or alternatively, I can go slash FL 200, flight level 200 is 20,000 feet, and I can put that in there. Okay, now, you notice it only changed those two. If I take this, flight level 200, and I skip to BISOP, you would think that it would change this one when I put it in there, but it doesn't. It leaves that at 28,000 feet. So I have to actually physically change every one of these. And I don't know if that's the case for a longer flight plan too, but if it is, that's a lot. That could be a lot of changes. But there you go, change them all, except obviously this one here. And Flagstaff, technically we could be a little bit lower, but I'm just going to leave it at 20,000. Okay, and there's our flight plan. Now, there are no departures out of page, and that's all right. But we're going to click on departure arrival because I just want to show you something real quick. Click departure arrival, KPGA departure. You must choose the SID before you choose the runway. I did this out of Phoenix and tried it the other way, and it doesn't work right. And somewhere in the documentation, I couldn't find it again, but I know it's in there because I read it. It explicitly says, make sure you choose the SID before you choose the runway. So don't decide which runway you're going to take and then decide the SID you're going to use. Make sure you know which SID you're going to use. Select that and then select the runway. Okay. The arrival, there's no arrival going into there. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to use the GPS approach, but same thing. If there's an actual star, you choose the star and then the approach in that order every time. Okay. Couple more bits of information on the CDU and then we'll be ready to move on here. Performance page. It's all about fuel management. That's all it is. You got 3 pages that all have to do with fuel management. Performance mode is manual or measured. I haven't messed with that. I have no intentions of messing with it, and I'll tell you why, because the documentation does not clarify for me what that means. Alright, next page. This is all informational. It's telling you what engines are using how much. The APU currently is using 44 pounds an hour. It's used 380 pounds total. And we have 5,000, that's not right. We don't have 5,588 pounds, do we? No, that's like the total they've used. That's kind of weird actually, isn't it? Since we're not running the engines, there shouldn't be anything there, but there you go. That's page 2. And page 3 is, again, fuel management. Tells you how far it is to where you're going, what your current ground speed is, what your fuel flow is, and so on and so forth. That's what you get under performance. If you go to MFD menu, multifunction display menu, you can click on the display. And that's for this guy right here and this guy. It's actually for both of them. And you can determine, let me move this over here. You can determine what shows up on here. Okay, so right now it's got airports and VORs. Now, if I turn all of these off, it will still show my route. It'll show where I'm going. Okay, so you don't have to worry about that. But if it starts to get cluttered, obviously, you can click those off. And waypoints, this is a good one here. These are all waypoints, right? So I don't need to know where these are right now, so I can just click that off again by going to the MFD menu, going to display, and I'm good to go. So I turn all of these off for now. And then MFD Advance is next. Now this is where we actually we can view our plan mode. Sorry, I had to take a drink there real quick. So when I click on this, you see previous waypoint, next waypoint, and to waypoint. Okay, so move this down here for just a second. This is where we can start getting into some of this stuff. Now we're not going to do the refs yet. We'll get to that eventually. Okay, but if I want to go to plan mode, what I need to press is, which one was it? It's not radar. Oh, that's right. Here's how I got to do it. See, I told you I'd have to remember a couple of things. So what I need to do, let me shrink this down for the moment, is I go over here to format. I click on format. Okay, and you can see plan is down here, right? In order to get to that, if I just click format again, it just turns it off. Okay, I actually need to go to this one has 2 knobs. Okay, and let me change my view. Not quite that far. Goodness. Okay, so this is the data knob, and this is the menu advance. The inner knob is the menu advance. So the blue one is to advance the menu. The yellow one is for data. I want the blue one because I want to advance the menu. And when I roll the mouse wheel up, you can see it changes. So I want to go down to plan. Now here's the kicker. If I click format again, you see it staying on rose mode. It didn't do anything. So actually what I have to do, scroll it down to plan, and then click the center of this button here. And that changes it to plan mode. And now, excuse me, I can go next waypoint and see my entire route, or previous waypoint if I want to figure something out. Okay, that's how you go to plan mode. Okay, to waypoint shows you the next waypoint, the current next waypoint, and you can see that PGA is not our next waypoint because we're right on top of it. So that's how you deal with plan mode. That's in MFD ADV. MFD data doesn't do anything, so don't even bother pushing it. Direct to is pretty straightforward. We're not going to be using it. Index, you can go back to status. Index again, you can go to position initialization, and index one more time, and you can go to arrival data, which this only populates if we've actually put arrival data in, which of course we haven't. Alright, so there's that, and that is literally... Oh, there is one more thing, sorry. You've got the message, which tells you messages, right? We've all dealt with messages, and then tuning. This is where you tune your radios at. Okay. If we're going to put in, we'll talk about it when we talk about doing the ILS, how you do an ILS approach. This is where you put in your nav radio, comm radios, and where you put in your frequency for your come on, really? I can't even think of the word right now. Transponder. There we go. That's where you put in your unique ID for your transponder. There you go. I leave that typically on the legs page. Shrink that down. Nope, shrink that down. And we don't want this on plan mode anymore. I like to have it on the compass rose. So there it is, compass rose. Press the middle of the button, and there we go. Alright, now our FMC is set up and our bugs are set up. what comes next. N1 reference, we need to set that. Oh, let's see. Where was N1 reference at? It was on here, isn't it? Under format? Nope, not under format. My apologies that I have to try and remember where this is, but for whatever reason I can't remember where N1 reference is. It's not on radar. Oh, I kind of feel like a fool. Let me find it real quick and then we'll hop back on here. Alright, I don't know why I couldn't remember, but I couldn't, but I found it. So N1 reference, this is where we start actually using this reference key here. So when I click it once, you can see I've got all kinds of stuff. These are my VREFs for takeoff. My N1 reference is over here, which is currently set to off. And then if I click it again, these are my approach references and my minimums references. And one more time, this is, I can change my pressure to hectopascals or inches of mercury, which is what I prefer since I fly in the U.S. You can change the altitude to metric on or off, and flight level alert on or off. And then the flight director you're supposed to be able to change as well, but I haven't gotten that to work. Let me try. You should just be able to click this twice. Nope, click it once. Roll the outer wheel here. Yep, outer wheel. And then if I click this, that should change it. But see, it doesn't for some reason. It should change that to the crossbar, but it's not. So, not sure why it's not changing that. But there you have it. So, yeah, didn't change it. It stayed just as it was. So, N1 reference is next. And I'm just looking here. Okay, yeah, V speeds are on the after start checklist. So we'll get to those eventually. But click on the reference button right up here. And then click on the line select key next to N1 reference. And then use this outer wheel on where it says data. And scroll that, right? Why is that not working? I guess you gotta use the, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's the inner wheel. Yep, it's the inner wheel, my apologies. So you click on the line select key and then you use the inner knob, menu advance, and you can change between FMS, manual, and off. I usually leave it on FMS, click the center knob, takes you back, now that's highlighted, we're good to go. As far as V speeds are concerned, technically, since we're here, I'm going to go ahead and do it. But technically, you do your V speeds during your after start checklist. However, we'll go ahead and do them now just to show you how it's really pretty straightforward. And this is where that gross weight we grabbed is going to come in handy. And I wrote it down. It's 19,980. Now, for the takeoff speeds, the lowest weight that I have is 24,000 pounds. Keep in mind also that all of those tables are for flaps 0, and we're going to be using flaps 15. So this is not going to be particularly accurate, but we're going to use it anyway. So 24,000 pounds being the lowest, we need the outside air temperature, which is 25 degrees Celsius. So we would go down that column of the chart until we get to 24,000, and we would find our V speeds, V1 of 113, V rotate of 125, and V2 of 135. So how do we set those? Well, first of all, you need to recognize that they're actually in reverse order. So V1 is at the bottom. Click the line select key, use the outer knob, which is data, to rotate it up. So we need actually down 113. Now here's the catch. Okay, you think, okay, we got it 113, let's do V rotate. Well, it just changed to 115. Why? Here's what you got to do. Once you have it set, press the center of the knob and it turns blue. When it turns blue, it will stay. Alright, so 113, V rotate is 125. These were pretty close already. Click the knob, it turns blue. V2 is 135, it's already there, so click the center of the knob, it turns blue. And then VFTO would be found all the way over on the right side of the chart based on the weight, which in our case is 161 knots. Rotate that up. And VFTO should be flaps after takeoff or something like that, I'm guessing, but again, I didn't see it specifically written in the manual. So scroll it to 161, click on the center of the knob, it turns blue, and now it's set. Same thing when you click the reference button again, you have your approach speeds, and we're not going to set those yet because I'm going to tell you how we go about doing that. And we're going to have to do a little math when the time comes because this thing doesn't give us our weight anywhere. Minimum, same thing. We will be using radar minimum of 200. That's what I use, so I'll just click on that and go ahead and highlight it right now, and I don't use the barrel minimum. One more time, just leaves us those options there. We're not going to do anything with those, and that is it. We're done there. Let's shrink that back down, and that took care of N1 reference. Next is the altimeters, and I need to grab my active sky because I didn't actually look at the altimeter. So weather report, KPGA, weather is 150. Let me write this down. I'll forget it. KPGA. Wind is 150 at 4 knots. That's not too fast. Obviously clear skies, and it's 3027. 30. Wow, that looked like I wrote 414 knots. 3027. My handwriting sucks. All right, so to set our altimeters, we use the baro knob, which is this guy right here. And I'll pop this up so that you can see it. So we want to roll this up to 3027. That's some high pressure. And then what I like to do most times, just to make sure my active sky is actually communicating properly, is I'll hit the B or Bravo button, and if it doesn't move, then you're good to go. Alright, briefing. We're not going to actually be doing the briefings today. I thought about doing it. We'll have the checklist popping up in there, but we're not going to do the briefings because, well, this is more about the tutorial and not about the briefings. I don't know. Maybe I'll do a briefing. There is no departure. Taxi's pretty straightforward, but we may do an arrival or an approach briefing. So, last thing we do on the before start checklist is the emergency lights. Let me pop up here so that you can actually see it. And the emergency lights are right here. We got to arm those. Click it once, left click it once, and it arms. And that is the before start checklist, ladies and gentlemen. Alright, so now that we have our before start checklist taken care of, and as you can see, that took a little while, and that's why it's important that you have that APU running, because if you try to just go through all of that with just a battery, it's going to die. So that's going to take us into our startup checklist, which is actually a pretty easy procedure. There's only a few things on here. First of all, brakes need to be set, which they are, and you can hold the little mouse over it and it tells you parking brake is on. Beacon needs to be on, which is up here, and we've already turned the beacon on. I did that when I turned the APU on. Engine computers need to be on auto. That's these two right here. Okay, and if you hold it over there, you can see it's on overspeed. Click it once, it's off. A second time is auto. So click them both to auto. Fuel pumps both need to come on. Okay, left pump, right pump, both on. And then start power, and this is where it gets a little weird and where, again, better documentation would have been helpful. Okay, it says start power, but for whatever reason, and maybe I'm just an idiot, but it didn't occur to me to push this button. I assumed you just push these buttons, but you actually push the middle one and it lights up. Awesome. So there you have it. Now, I'm sure somewhere in the reference manual for this aircraft, which is included, there is a reference manual, although it's a little bleak. I showed it to you. That's where all those charts and stuff were. It maybe says somewhere in there what the N2 needs to be at, the percentage before you introduce fuel. But I didn't find it, and mostly I skimmed it. I'm not going to lie to you. So I went with 20, and the reason I went with 20% is that's where you see the N2 starting to really slow down, and so, I don't know, I just made an assumption. Maybe I'm wrong on that. If you're a Hawker pilot in the real world, please let me know. By all means, at what percentage of N2 do we introduce fuel? That being said, we're going to start with engine number 2, and it's a very simple procedure. Click on engine number 2. It says operating, and I'll pop this up so you can see. So you can see our N2 is coming up right here. And when that gets to 20%, I'm going to click on this knob right here to introduce fuel. Bam, there it is. And just like that, in she comes. And that, of course, is one of the Peacocks. Peacock. Anyway, but that's the fuel lever. So N2's or engine 2 is spinning up now. Everything's coming online, so we should be good to go. I just like to let it stabilize a little bit. And you can do that by looking at the N2 or the N1. Let those stabilize. Here's your N1 right here, and it also shows your N1 here. And the reason it's showing it here is because I set that N1 reference over here to FMC. I got this itch on my ear from these headphones. Okay, so we're stabilized now, so same exact procedure for engine number 1. We hop up top here, click on the engine start button, back down here, I'll pop it up so you can see it again. We're watching our N2, okay, which is over here still, and we're waiting for it to get to 20 or above. There it is, 20%. We'll go ahead and introduce fuel now, and the engine fires right up and we're good to go. Very easy. Let that stabilize before we actually turn the APU off, and you can hear the engines coming online now. Now the engines start up relatively quickly, but I have noticed just through playing around with it that if I were to start them and then really quickly try to introduce throttle or advance the throttles, add power, it doesn't seem to do anything. So apparently it takes a minute for them to really be ready to go. So just something to keep in mind if you're in a hurry. So there's that. And that's it. That's the startup checklist. All done. Okay. Now we're going to go into the after start checklist. So first thing on the after start checklist is to turn the start power off. Click the button and she's off and we're good to go. Next would be external power disconnect, but we didn't use that, so I wrote in here APU off. And what we'll do is we'll hop down here, and I probably could have mapped a key to this so that I could just hop to this view, but I didn't. So there you go. So we don't need the bleed air. We'll turn that off first. Generator, you can trip it or click it up, and it just resets. So there's nothing to do there. So right-click this button, I believe, and off she goes. And it's not ready to load anymore. It's winding down. You can see all the RPMs coming down, the exhaust gas temperature coming down, and the generator load coming down. So all those are coming down, and as soon as I do that, just to be sure, I like to come over here and make sure my alternators are on and that my inverters both get reset, even though that's not on the checklist. I mean, it is the alternators, but I like to do it right away because I want to make sure my battery's not going to die. Simple enough, right? So next is generators 1 and 2, check that they're on. Alright, Gen 1, Gen 2, they reset when you left click them. So there we go, they're reset now. Check your volts and your amps. Well, we're good on volts, and we got plenty of amps going on, so we're good. I don't know what the limits are. It's probably written into the manual somewhere in the reference section, but to be honest, it's a sim. So unless we've built in some type of malfunction, we should be good to go. Moving on, air conditioning as required. That's already all on. We're going to leave that as is. So yeah, we're good on that. Alternators come on at this point. Again, I make sure they were already on it because, again, for APU start, it just says start the APU. It doesn't tell me if I need alternators or anything like that. And I just want to make sure my battery doesn't die. And I didn't do any tests to see if leaving the alternators off made the battery die with the APU on. So if you want to test that out, by all means, go ahead. Heaters on. I guess these are part of the heaters. Are these heat or are these air? You know, it doesn't actually clarify on that. So again, a little confusing there. Pido amps, we need to check those. That's these over here. Now I don't know what they're supposed to be at, but I know that the right one is always a little lower than the left one. And for some reason it says that it's, well, I guess it's to switch to the right and then switch to the left. But anyway, we've got plenty of amps going on in there, so we're good on that. Engine anti-ice as required. It's plenty warm, so we don't need engine anti-ice. But it doesn't say on the checklist, and I forgot to write it in, but the pido heat needs to come on, and the screen heat, that's your windshield heat, both need to come on as well. Those are just automatic. Air brakes, it says to have the air brakes shut. To me, it means down or the lever all the way forward, and of course I've got that mapped in, so there we go there. APR needs to be tested. Now this is one of those that, try as I might, I couldn't seem to find the test. I'm not sure what the APR even is, but we've got APR arm, but I can't find anything to test it. So I don't know why. I don't know. There's got to be a test switch somewhere, but maybe they just didn't model it or whatever. I don't know. But again, you know, you've got override, emergency wheel brakes, APR arm. I had no test switch, and it seems to me that a test switch would be right near here somewhere, right? And it's not. So we're getting this little flickering or blinking electric warning, and it's saying up top, and I think it's because the bus tie is still open. So let's close that real quick, and let's turn off the standby inverter. Okay, we can turn those two on as well. That's cabin AC must be off for takeoff and TL. I don't know. Takeoff and landing. Taxi takeoff and landing is probably what it's saying. So AC's on for now, but it doesn't say on the checklist to turn it off. There is no taxi checklist. In fact, it goes from the after start checklist right to the startup checklist. So there you have it. Or not the start, to the takeoff checklist. Come on, brain function. Anyway, V speeds would be set at this point. This is the point in the checklist where we set V speeds. But of course we already did that, and you can do it at the same time that I did it as well. You don't necessarily have to wait until you get to this point. Now I'm just looking on here real quick. There is no... Now I pretty much copied the checklist straight from the documentation. And you see here we're still getting a warning down here. It's for the rudder bias. And this one drove me nuts. I mean, this drove me nuts. This is one where I had to scan slowly through everything to find it, because that won't turn off unless you actually do something with the rudder bias. And it's not on the checklist. I was just double checking and I don't see it anywhere on the checklist. So we're going to go ahead and do it right now. Oh, goodness gracious. The rudder bias is right down here. And you can't see it right now because the air brake is in the way. And that's why it was kicking my butt. Alright. Rudder bias. Left click these, and they'll close themselves. And now the rudder bias is taken care of, and of course the air brake is on. Turn that off real quick, no problem. And we're good to go. And that's going to take us to the before takeoff checklist, which of course we're going to take care of that once we get out, once we get out home short of the runway. So a couple last minute things before we do that. I like to turn on these lights because they look really good even in the daytime. They do help you to see the wording or the lettering here. You can see if I turn those down, it's a little bit harder to see those, so I like to turn all the, well, not all the lights on. I like to have all the backlighting on. So displays is just on or off, instrument is on or off, panels, you can change how bright they are. The pad is cabin light, we don't need that. The console, I like this one here, all the way up. Pedestal, that's in the center. And then floodlight is actually the lights underneath here, which we don't need those right now. Same thing up top. Pop up over here. We've got the panel lights here, and again, I like to turn those all the way up. Looks good, makes it much easier to see everything. And then the instrument lights are just on or off. And that's it. Oh, last thing, and again, there's no taxi checklist. Landing lights, these are landing and taxi lights. So one click is for taxi, 2 clicks is for landing lights, and then right click to put them back to taxi mode. That's one of the little quirks in here. Most of these switches, you left click to go one way and left click to go the other way, but some of them you have to left click to go one way and right click to go the other way. So for example, the landing lights, you left click, but if I left click, it's not doing anything. I got to right click to go back the other direction. Okay, let's turn these other lights on. These aren't really on there either. So logo light is on, strobe light is on, nav light's on, and we'll put that to pulse, and then taxi lights are on, and then seatbelts need to come on, and we should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and taxi this thing out, and then when we're holding short of the runway, we'll hop back on here and we'll do that before takeoff checklist. Alright, let's take care of this before start checklist then. The brakes were checked while taxiing out, so we're good on that. Instruments, we need to check those. Not a lot to check. I mean, everything seems to be working, so we're gonna say we're good to go on that. Altimeters, the left hand and right hand altimeters need to be within 40 feet of each other. Now it's a sim and they're going to be the same, but let's just pop it up. So this one's at 4320, and then the right hand side is at 4320. So they're within 40 feet of each other and we're good to go on that. Thrust reversers need to be armed. That's down here. I'll zoom down so you can see. There's your thrust reversers. You click these buttons to arm them, and we're good to go on that. Engine computers need to be armed. And I stand corrected, I did write in rudder bias in here. I typed it in, I just had it on a little subsection here. But engine computers need to be armed. We hop up here, and engine computers 1 and 2, they're both on auto, so that to me is armed. I don't know why they went with the term arm, but flaps need to be set. We're going to do a flaps 15 departure. We mentioned that earlier, so that's just going to be 1 click on the flaps. There we go. Seats and harnesses are secure. Windows are closed. Briefing has been reviewed. It's pretty much it's pretty much a straightforward departure. We are going to be departing straight out. It doesn't actually show up on here properly, nor on here for that matter. But we've seen the flight plan. Here it is right here. We're going to be banging a right onto the runway here, and then you can just make it out. There's Cliff right there. So pretty much a straight out departure. Simple enough. Battery amps need to be below 20. Not sure why that is, but here's the battery amps, and I think it's supposed to be below 200. So we're good on those. Where are we at? Battery amps. Fuel check quantity. Okay. Should be in here, right? Check quantity. Nope, I stand corrected. Fuel quantity, I remember now, is under the performance section. And here we go. So currently we have 3,119 pounds of fuel. Our fuel flow is around 675 pounds per hour. We've got 1,750 pounds in reserves. Currently burning 338 aside. And fuel required, I guess at our current speed, would be a lot of fuel to get where we're going. But obviously we're not going to need that much once we get in the air. What's next here? FMS, we've already checked that. TCAS, now it says to test it. This is another test that I cannot find. I looked and looked and looked and looked and looked and looked, and I swear to you I looked and I could not find it. But I do know where to turn it on, and that's right here. You click on the line select key next to traffic, and now the TCAS is on. If you want to turn it off, just click it again. Alright, so TCAS is now on. We could also turn on weather radar if we want. There are some clouds down here. I'm in the Phoenix area, so maybe up by Sedona there's clouds as well. So I can either click once here for terrain, which should all turn red because we're below a lot of the terrain. Click a second time for weather, and it's currently set at 0. That's the tilt angle. Alright, and we tilt it with this knob. This is the range knob on the outside. I don't think I mentioned that earlier. To adjust the range of your map, you scroll the outer wheel or yellow wheel up or down. Alright, so if I scroll it, I'm scrolling the wrong way, but if I scroll up, it zooms out, and it's not really showing anything on here. There's 8. You can see it changing right here, the distance changing. But because we don't have the map on here, you don't see the water or anything like you do on this one. So it's a little easier to see the zoom on there. So this is me zooming back in, and there we go. So that's how you zoom. And then to change the tilt angle of this guy, we use the inner knob, and we want to tilt it up. So I don't know how high up we tilt it. We'll just go to +3. Alternatively, if you click on radar, you can cycle through terrain and weather radar. And supposedly the weather radar works, and so that's why I want to turn it on. We'll see. Exterior lights as required. We click these one more time to go to landing lights, and we're good to go on that. Transponders check. We already checked that. We know we're good on that. TCAS is already on. Flight controls free and correct. Now I could not find a function on here anywhere. None of these buttons work, for example, that would let me actually check the flight controls. So about the only thing we can do is go full left, full right, neutral, full up, full down. You can see the yoke moving over there, neutral, and then rudder, go full left, and we could I guess look at those, full right and neutral. We can pop that guy up there. I don't mind having them on while I'm flying. They don't get in the way too much. And that's the best we can do as far as flight controls go. Anti-ice and engine ignition as required. We don't need those. Engine ignition, we could leave them on or we could turn them off. You know, did we not turn those on when we started the engines? I think we didn't. I think I completely missed that. So my apologies. The startup checklist, fuel pumps go on, engine ignition switches go on, and then the engine start switch. Somehow I think I missed that, but anyway, we'll have them on for takeoff. MWS check, that's this guy down here. Again, can't do anything with that, so And then the APR needs to be armed, and that's this button down here. So we'll arm the APR, maybe. There we go, now it's armed. And that's it until the after takeoff checklist, which we'll perform once we get our autopilot going. So let's turn the track IR on, a little jump there. Brakes off, I do that by pressing the brake pedals. Now, just a little note, to get this thing going, you got to give her a little extra juice. And then once she gets moving, you'll need to back it off because she'll get going pretty quick. Like right now, you can see the N1's still coming up, and now she's just starting to move. And then once we get her going, we back it off. And the engines sound pretty good on this. There's not a lot of asymmetrical thrust because the engines are along the fuselage. So just something to keep in mind. Now, whoever did this particular airport got this wrong. You can see we're starting to speed up quite a bit here. You do not taxi on this portion of the runway where the yellow chevrons are. That's a no taxi area, so just a heads up. We should have plenty of runway, but we're going to line up right on the end of it here, take advantage of the fact that we're in an area we're not technically supposed to be anyway. Pull those throttles all the way back, and she will continue to coast for a little bit. You see that little sort of bounce right there? That was because that area is not meant to be taxied on. So, and you certainly can't land on it. It's not meant to take the weight of your aircraft. So, alright, our V speeds will show up on our speed tape over here. I'm just letting it roll a little. They will show up on our speed tape over here, so we'll try to keep an eye out for those. And let's go ahead and throttle it up. And this aircraft, I forget if it's right or left. We're going to find out here in a minute. This aircraft really likes to pull during the takeoff roll. Okay, it's starting to pull left. And so it's a little squirrely coming down the runway. Like it's pulling hard left now. And I'm trying to keep it centered. It's really kind of obnoxious how much it pulls to the left. Okay, coming up on V1 right now. There's V1, and there's rotate, pull the yoke back, up and away, line up with that flight director. We got a positive rate of climb, bring the landing gear up, and we do tend to get a little wild yaw on this thing on occasion. Okay, let's keep the nose down just a little bit. Flaps can come up at this point. Continue to climb out like this for a moment. And then we're going to go to autopilot here pretty soon. So what I want to do is I want to turn the autopilot on, and this is a little bit of a pain when you only have one pilot. I want to climb around 220 knots. So let's get the autopilot and yaw damper on. So yaw damper, autopilot. Okay, now we've got the autopilot on, and then we're just over 220 knots. So hit flight level change, and you see that put us at 226 right there. Now, here's the thing with this flight level change. Let me hit the nav button first, because we're not on nav yet. You see how this thing's skyrocketing all of a sudden. Let's hit the nav button. That put us on FMS. That's what we want. And so it's going to turn to our first waypoint. It doesn't seem to have any problem intercepting the waypoints, so we're good on that. Let me turn track IR off so that so I can show you everything I want to show you here. So it's doing all right. Now, here's the thing. If you want it at a higher speed, okay, like let's say I crank this speed up, okay? This thing will do a nosedive at the ground to gain that speed. It won't just level off. It will absolutely dive for the ground. Okay, so that's something you absolutely want to keep in mind. You do not want to crank the speed up quickly on this thing, or it will take a nosedive to try and gain that speed. Okay, in this case, it's doing all right. It's gradually slowing down, so we're good to go. So that's on the flight level change. Now, landing lights are coming off here. Let's do that real quick. Right-click them twice because we don't need the taxi lights either. We're above 10,000 feet now, so we're good on that. Okay. Let me change my view just a little bit here. Let's do the after takeoff checklist, and then there's a few quirks I want to cover here. Okay, first things first. Landing gear is up. It is. Main air valves 1 and 2 need to be open, and that's these two way over here. Okay, you can see right now they're closed, so left click them each once and now they're open. Alright, and those are supposed to be closed while on the ground. And I forgot to turn these off during taxi and takeoff. So, oops. Let's see what's next. Yaw damper's already been engaged, flaps are up, APR can be disarmed now. That's this button down here, remember? Disarm that. Engine sync N1 or N2. I usually sync it to N1. Okay, here's the engine sync. If you click it once, that's N2. Click it twice, that's N1. And it doesn't actually do anything as far as I have seen. Okay, I don't see it, like you can see they're out of sync right now, and that's because my throttles are both a little different from each other. We could change to a climb setting on the throttles really quick, so we're just going to pull them back a little bit because this thing does not, it doesn't have that wicked crazy power that you would hope for it to have. Did that change? Nope, it's 226 still. So you can see it's slowing to 226, but because it's starting to slow a little more, she's going to continue to decrease climb because we're in the FLC mode. Okay, now here's the catch to this. Actually, let's finish the after takeoff checklist first. Anti-ice and engine ignition as required, and then it goes into the climb checklist. So that's the end of the after takeoff checklist. Let's do the climb checklist. Altimeter's set and checked, and that'll be once we cross 18,000. We will press the center of this button, and that will automatically put them at 29 or 902 or standard. Exterior lights as required. Cabin notices are taken care of. Keep an eye on the pressurization and keep an eye on the oxygen. And that is also the conclusion of our climb checklist. Now, a couple of little quirks with this thing. First of all, in the flight change mode, it is not set to intercept 20,000 feet. I don't know why. It should be, but it's not. I'm telling you right now, it is not going to intercept 20,000 feet on its own, and we're going to be talking for a minute, so we're probably going to see that. So the only thing that I've found that seems to work, because if I press flight change again, all it does is go to altitude mode. I don't want that. So I had to press it again. In case you didn't see that, let me move it over here. Watch right here what happens when I hit FLC again. It goes to altitude. That's altitude hold. I don't want that. So I click it one more time, and it goes back to flight level change mode. So if I hit altitude right now, it's going to intercept the altitude it's at right now. I don't want that either. Okay, if I hit altitude twice, it's going to go to pitch hold mode, but neither one of them is an altitude select mode. I don't know why it's not grabbing altitude select. That's what I need it to do, but it's not doing that for some reason. Okay, we're above 18,000. Real quick, watch your barometric pressure here. Click the middle of the button. Bam, 29 or 9 or 2, and we're good to go on that. So for whatever reason, the flight level change mode does not actually function properly. And that's a little quirk with this thing. It's a little obnoxious. The same could be said for the VNAV on descent. VNAV does not do what I want it to do. So for whatever reason, it goes to VNAV alt and then tries to hold altitude even when I change the altitude on the MCP. So those are a couple little quirks of this thing, and I'm not really sure if that's just an error or if that's the way the aircraft really is or what, but there you have it. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's pretty much it until the cruise checklist. Now, see, that's our notification that we're 1,000 feet from our altitude. Okay, and you can see that here. Now, I'm going to just leave this up for a second because I'm almost 100% positive, unless for some reason it's going to be different this time, that it's just going to bypass 20,000 feet. And we'll know here shortly because we're climbing at 1,300 feet per minute, but as you can see, it's not, well, maybe it is decreasing the climb. Let's see. It's still at 1,300. See, it should be decreasing the climb at this point to intercept 20,000 feet. Well, it is now. Okay, well, I promise you, I've flown this thing like 15 times now, and this is the first time that FLC, flight level change mode, has properly intercepted the altitude without me having to interfere with it. So there we go. So that's good. Hopefully it works for you every time. You can see it is now intercepted and is holding the altitude at 20,000 feet. It does not have an auto throttle, so as our speed continues to climb here, what we're going to want to do is we're pretty close to cruise. Now you can pull up the charts and it'll tell you what to set your N1 and stuff at for different speeds. I did not do that for this tutorial. It's very simple. You look on the chart and it's going to give you the information you need, and you set it based on what the chart says. And the only reason I didn't do it on this one is it's a very short flight, so I'm just letting the speed roll up a little bit, and then I'm just going to bring the throttles back. And now here's the thing, this does not have I would expect it to have more thrust, to be honest with you. I do not have to roll these back very far, and I'm leaving these up just so you can see what's going on, okay, because it's much easier to see these pop-ups. But you can see, watch my N1 here. So I'm going to roll it back just a little bit, not much, okay, So we were at 94, and you can see that my throttles are both a little off. I've never been able to get that to fix properly. So there we are. They're both the same, and you can see that that put us right around 200. It's actually slowing down a little bit, and it'll continue to slow down until it evens out. So there's not this high-powered thrust that I would probably expect from such a classic aircraft, especially a newer version of it. I would expect it to have a lot more thrust. But if I want to maintain 260 knots, I got to add just a little bit of thrust to both sides. And so there we go, 93.4, and you can see that's going to take it back up just a little bit, but you get the point. So you just have to adjust your throttles. Excuse me. And again, we're doing a very short flight here, so I'm not taking the time to go through the charts. And I've shown you those types of charts before. They're no different for this aircraft than they are for any other. It's going to give you a setting based on the speed you want, the fuel rate you want to burn at, and the altitude that you're going to fly at, and then you just set either the N1 or the N2 based on that, and you're good to go. And that's it. So that takes us into our cruise checklist, which is really a very simple checklist. We want to make sure our pressurization is set, which it is. Okay. Well, it's got our cabin altitude goal at 7,991 feet, which is a little crazy. I would think that that would have stayed at 800 feet. But let's scroll it back down here. Not sure why that did that. And maybe I'm misunderstanding how this works. I did not find anything in the documentation about the cabin altitude. So I would prefer the cabin to be at a lower altitude. Obviously, that makes it easier to breathe. Oxygen check, that's this over here. I don't think this needle actually moves, so we're good on that. Anti-ice and engine ignitions as required. We'll just leave them on because they're going to need to be on. Well, the engine ignitions, we don't need the anti-ice. There's really very little moisture in the air. And in fact, we can change our tilt here. Let me pop this up. Let's change our radar tilt. And looking straight on, it can be hard to find the right part of the knob. But let's just change it to below us just a little bit, just -1, and see if there's any moisture in these clouds. We should start seeing, according to the manual, it should show us the weather radar. So you can see we're starting to come into more and more clouds. Depending on whether or not there's any moisture in those clouds, we should get some feedback. So, and there's a nice view of the lower part. It's not really the Grand Canyon at this point, but that's why I have this photo reel in there. And then if you look closely, you can actually see that that's the end of it right there. We're actually right along the edge of it. You can see the difference between the photo reel textures and the default textures. But there you have it. That's the cruise checklist, which means there's nothing else to do until we get close to descent. So I'm going to hop off for now, and as we get closer to descent, I will hop back on. We'll take care of setting up our landing VREF speeds as well as our descent checklist. See you in a few minutes. Well, a few seconds. Alright, we're probably getting pretty close to our top of descent here. It doesn't calculate it for us. I haven't taken the time to calculate it, but there's all kinds of things to go through, and I don't want to end up rushing at the end of this tutorial to do that. So as you can see, we're coming up on Bicep here, Bishop, whatever you want to call it. And then from there it's Nav OKC Jawuso. Now Jawuso comes from the approach. I did that by clicking on departure arrival, select GPS 03, and we're good to go. I'm not going to change it now. But there you have it. There's Bicep. Oh, it got rid of it. Great. Let's try it again then. Departure, arrival, GPS 03 at Jawuso, and we're good to go. Put it in the flight plan. Go to the legs page, and Navajo, KC, Jawuso. Now at Jawuso we need to be at 8,000 feet, so slash 8,000. You can see it changed the entire flight plan, put all of those back to 28,000. But these are good here, that's what we want to be at. So now that's in there from Lyrit on to Lom, and then on in from there, and that's the runway that we're going to be taking, which is runway 3. I'll brief that here probably, I don't know, if I get a chance to brief it. I got a bunch of other stuff to cram in here, but if I get a couple of minutes of blank time, I will be sure to record some space to put in the approach briefing. Okay, so back to the legs page there. It's a GPS, so we don't need to put in a frequency. Altitude, we're going to take this down to 6,600. Okay, and because we're on altitude mode right now, see, it's just automatically starting to descend. So if I press VNAV, okay, see, it's VALTV. I don't really know what that means. I probably should have looked that up, but anyway, we want to go to 6,600. The VNAV has been an issue for me. So there's 6,600. It is descending. Itchy nose, sorry. It is descending at 400 feet per minute. Now, I don't know if that's the vertical profile or not, so we're going to have to keep an eye on it to make sure that we get to 8,000 at Jawuso, however you say it, and then 6,600 at Exuti, and Lyrit, and then on in from there. And I'm hoping that it's not too cloudy because it is a visual approach after all. So we got 6 nautical miles to KC. I did not get a chance to do the descent checklist because of, well, because it started descending when I didn't want it to. So descent checklist. We need to, main air valves 1 and 2 need to be open, which they are. That's these two over here. They're open. Pressurization is set. Briefing has not been given, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do it. And that is it for the descent checklist. But now what we need to talk about is landing VREF speeds. Now there's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to try and go through this really quickly so we don't get caught up here. One is you can go, if you wrote down your not only your initial weight, but your initial weight in fuel. So we had, what did we have, 3,300 pounds I think it was. Go to performance. You can see how much we have now, subtract the difference, and then realize that you're going to burn a little more, do the math, and that's going to give you a weight, and then you're going to use that weight to determine your landing VREF. I hope that makes sense to you. However, I'm going to show you a much easier way to do it. Put that back on the legs page. We're on to Jawuso already. We need to be at 8,000. It's not descending any faster. And how far do we have to get to Jawuso? 37 nautical miles. It looks like it's trying to descend a little quicker. Let's go ahead and pull the throttles back. It's going to descend. Even if it descends at the same rate, it's going to get there quicker at a slower, get down quicker at a slower speed. I hope that, does that make sense? The slower I'm flying, okay, the slower that I'm flying, the less horizontal distance I cover for the vertical distance that I'm covering. Okay, that's why I scroll that down. Okay, but let's take care of this weight. Here's the quick way. Click on aircraft, click on fuel and payload. Our current weight is 18,975 pounds. Okay, that's our current weight. Leave that as is. Turn that silly menu off. Now, let's take a look here, and let's look at our performance. Our fuel flow is obviously down substantially. Okay, our time to reserves is here. What we really want to look at, pull this guy up. This is telling us that at 12:07 we're going to be at Lyrit, which is our last waypoint. Okay, but it doesn't show the current time on here. And I've looked, and I didn't find the current time anywhere either, which is kind of obnoxious, to be honest with you. But that being said, and I'm doing this on the fly, so my apologies. So the total time en route is 8 minutes. So if I press this button here, I've got 8 minutes now. And I know in 8 minutes I'm not going to burn that much fuel, so I can reasonably say that my 18,975 pounds is going to be relatively close to my landing weight. Makes sense, right? So I look on here, I go to the next one up, which is 19,000 pounds. That's on my chart. And my landing VREF is 114 knots. Okay, so pop this guy up, pull it over here so you can see, hit the reference button twice. VREF is 114 knots. Yellow wheel, scroll it down to 114. Press the middle button and you're good to go. V approach is 10 knots higher. Yellow wheel, scroll it down to 124. Press the button and now we're all set. And now our VREFs, our landing reference speeds, are set. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and shut up here and just record a little blank space so that we can do an approach briefing right here. Alright, since we have a little time to squeeze this approach briefing in here, I want to go ahead and take care of that. It's going to be the GPS runway 3 approach into Sedona. The final approach course is 33 degrees with a runway landing elevation, runway length, landing length at 5,132 feet, a very short runway. Touchdown zone elevation is 4,792 feet, just a skosh below the airport elevation at the center. It is not an ILS approach, so we hope the weather's good and we will not be flying the actual ILS. Let's take a look at the approach itself here. We're coming from the north, so we're going to hit Jawuso first, which is right here. We want to be at or above 8,000 feet for that one. That's the initial approach fix down to Exudi. And then from Exudi, bang a left to 033 degrees to Lyrit, which is our final approach fix, and then Lom, which is our missed approach point. And then beyond Lom, down in we go. Take a look at the profile view really quick. Again, 8,000 at or above at Exudi. I just happen to already know that, and so that's why I've got it. That's why I set it over here. But it does tell us 8,000 at or above here. Then we begin our descent there down to 6,600 at or above at Lyrit, which again is the final approach fix. And then continue on a 3-degree glide slope to Lom, and on in from there as long as we don't have to execute a missed approach. As far as that missed approach is concerned, again, this is obviously not Navigraph charts because they do not have a chart. They don't have this airport in their database. So we're using a standard FAA chart here. So for the missed approach, it's a climbing right turn to 12,000 feet and then hold at Minji. It's pretty simple. And the way they lay it out here is obviously graphically, so if it was climbing straight ahead it'd be a straight arrow, but instead it's curving to the right, so it's a climbing right turn to 12,000 feet and then to Minji, and then we can see here that we hold at Minji, and we see the same thing here on this page. A lot of terrain around here. We obviously want to be careful about that. When we come in over here at Jawuso, we're going to have mountains off to the right here, and then obviously if we have to do a missed approach, there are two reasons that the missed approach is set up the way it is. One, it's quite a bit before the actual runway. That's because the runway is very short and these mountains are not very far away from it. So we would make that climbing right turn before we even made it to the airport. Other than that, AWAS, which is your weather, 118.525, we're obviously getting that from Active Sky. Phoenix Approach Control, that's who you would contact when you're approaching here. On an IFR flight plan, Prescott radio, and then Unicom for when it's closed. And that's pretty much it. Oh, here's the text version. Missed approach, climbing right turn at 12,000, direct to Minji waypoint and hold. That, ladies and germs, is your approach briefing. Okay, so we got the approach briefing out of the way. I did manage to squeeze it in. You can see I've got some photo real scenery coming up here. Let's go ahead and take care of the approach checklist so that that's knocked out and out of the way, and we're going to probably have to increase our rate of descent or slow our speed a little bit more. In fact, I'm going to slow us down a little bit more for the moment. Let's pull those throttles back. Okay, altimeters need to be set and checked, and they are set. I'll pop it up for you. 3028, that's the altimeter setting currently. So we should be good on that. Exterior lights as required. Technically, we don't put them on until we get below 10,000 feet, so I'll try to remember to do that. Cabin notification. Hey, folks, we're landing. Buckle up. Seats and harnesses are checked and secure. Nose wheel steering, which is this knob here, you got to stay clear of that, and then check the fuel quantity, which we did a bit of that when we were planning our VREF speed. So the next thing we're going to have is the landing checklist, which is going to come up here pretty darn quick. What I really want to do is I want to focus on making sure we get down in time. So we're almost on top of Jawuso here. We're going to be there. It's 10 miles out, and we've still got 7,000 feet to go. So we are definitely not descending fast enough. So I'm going to take this up to 2,000 foot per minute descent. I'm going to keep those throttles down so that we don't increase speed substantially. Okay. And what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to make sure I get down to Jawuso at 8,000 feet. It says 8,000 at or above, but there's only 6 miles between Jawuso and Exudi, where we need to be at 6,600. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that I'm at least close to 8,000 feet when I get to Jawuso. Boy, those are some names, aren't they? They got to mean something. Some of them do mean something. Some of them you'll notice they mean something somewhere. We could probably bring in flaps. You can certainly bring in the first flap setting at 200 knots, but we're not going to, not yet. We got 4,000 feet to go and 7 miles and change, so I think we're actually good. We can bring that up just a little bit. Bring it back to 1,700 feet per minute. But we want, and I'm going to let the speed come down a little more. So I'm not, even though I decreased my rate of descent, I did not increase my throttle. So I want that speed to keep bleeding off just a little bit. We want to really set up for a nice, clean approach, especially into Sedona. If you've never flown into Sedona, mark my word, folks, this is going to be a trip. It's a good thing we're landing at such a slow speed because it is a very short runway, and I do have the Orbix Sedona add-on, and it looks absolutely fantastic. Now, I had an issue with it yesterday when I was doing some testing where the photoreal scenery, which was way off as far as the elevation was concerned, was trying to ride over the top of my Orbix scenery. So I'm hoping that I have that issue fixed, because otherwise not only does it look like crap, but it actually causes you to crash on landing because the runway like had these huge humps in it. It was really crazy. And that is not our runway up there, by the way, in case anybody's wondering. That is a different airport. Not sure what airport that is, to be honest with you. I could pop it up, but I'm not going to. We're about to go below 10,000 feet. Let's turn the landing lights on. And it always looks weird to have the photo scenery. Now, let's be honest, though. The photo scenery certainly looks a lot better, at least for mountains and stuff like that. For cities, it doesn't look so great. It doesn't look so great at all. But for mountains and stuff, it looks fantastic, and I really like it. So just about on top of Jawuso here. We're at 9,600 feet. Now on to Exudi. We do have our altitude. I don't know why it's saying 0 feet. We've got it set to 6,600 feet. So we're good to go there, but we may need to intervene. Since we're on vertical speed mode, we'll probably have to intervene to make sure we don't go below 6,600. The airport's going to be over there on top of that little mesa there. So yeah, we'll watch for it to get to 6,600, which is going to have us pretty close to these hills and stuff like that, but it's still reasonable. And I'm just going to stay on here because the truth is it's going to come around quick, and I just don't want to miss anything because, you know, we weren't already on here, and I don't want to rush through anything either. I am going to go ahead and bring in that first setting of flaps. There it is, flaps 15 right there, and that's going to slow us down a little more. I want to keep it probably right around 180 knots for the moment. We're getting pretty close to, what are we, 4 miles, 4.7 miles, 4.6 miles from Exudi. And then we still got a little ways to go, so we're going to be maintaining, you know, 6,600 feet for a little while. LOM is the missed approach point, as you may recall from the approach briefing. So let's just, what are we at here? I'm just kind of filling the space with conversation for the moment. We're coming down here just about 7,000 feet. So that'll be pretty close, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hit altitude hold once we get close. I never found anything, maybe I missed it, I never found anything in the documentation that says what this F stands for. Maybe it's because flaps are out. But either way, here we are, 6,600, close enough, 6,700, and we're going to need to bring in some throttle now, because as she levels out, she's going to slow down. And remember, this thing does not have this amazingly strong thrust. I'm bringing in a lot of throttle here just to maintain 180 knots with one flap setting. So I'm just watching my speed right now. I'm letting the autopilot do its thing. There we are, we're making our turn. We don't want to speed up too much. Remember, no auto throttle on this aircraft, so we're going to have to do this on our own. Now, I didn't talk about it. We got just a minute, so I will here. If we were doing an ILS approach, what we would do is we would go in here, we would click on tune, and we would put the ILS frequency in the nav1 and nav2 radios. Once that's done, as we're turning on our final course here, we would switch our preset to VOR. In this case it's VOR2, and that would be fine because we put it in both of them. And then we would hit the approach switch, which is this one right here, and it would lock onto the localizer, and then it would lock onto the glide slope, and it would do all of that good stuff on its own. And we're speeding up a little bit, so I want to slow down, pull those throttles back. You can just make out the red lights right here, and that means we're below glide slope, and that's all right. That's where we want to be. But that's all you would have to do for an ILS. Everything else would be the same. All your procedures would be the same. I'm going to slow us way down and actually set up for this final approach here. Okay, so I'm pulling these throttles way back. Landing gear is going to come out any minute now. And then we're going to go through this landing checklist really quick so that we can actually land the aircraft. Okay, landing gear coming down. That's going to help us slow down quickly. And the slower we're going, the better as far as I'm concerned, because that's going to give us a little more time to go through this landing checklist. And I'm going to start doing it now. Landing gear down in 3 green it is. I'm watching that speed. I don't want it to drop too fast. We can bring in the last setting of flaps now. Standby gear indicator check. I don't know what the standby gear indicator is, so there's nothing I can do with that. Air brakes are off. That's good. That's where we want them to be. You can see we're coming up on our VREF now, so we need to bring in throttle. Okay, and we're coming up on glide slope now as well. Bring in a little more throttle here. APR needs to be armed. That's this one down here. APR is now armed. Autopilot's going to have to come off in a second, but I need more throttle here. Landing gear down, obviously nose wheel steering. Engine sync needs to go off. Let me do that real quick before we get too high here. Engine sync, there we go, off. And autopilot needs to come off at this point because otherwise we're going to be too high. So autopilot off, start our descent. We're already just a little bit too high. Bring the throttles back just a little bit more.
2500.
There's our first call out. Flaps set, and then we can put them to the dump mode, and I don't know if that gives us more flaps or what. Didn't find anything in the documentation about that. We're definitely a little too high. And then go around altitude needs to be set, which is I don't know, I don't see it on my chart right now. 12,000. Okay, descending just a little quick
2500.
there. Thank you. So let's set this up to 12,000. Let's go here, and that is our landing checklist. Okay, we're a little fast. We're actually way too fast. We need to slow way down, and we need to get our nose down a little bit. And there is obviously a bit of a crosswind going on here. That's all right. Slow us down more. So I'm trying to get it back down. We ended up a little high because I was trying to take care of that landing checklist. I do not want to do a missed approach at this airport. It is not an easy one, as you may recall from the briefing there. So getting the speed down. No, we're coming down. We're good. We're at a pretty high rate of descent right now, 1,000 feet per minute. For this speed, that's a very high rate of descent. You can see there's one red, and we'll have another one here shortly. And we can start bringing in some throttle, just a little bit, not too much. You can see that is a very, very short runway. Okay, now we'll reduce the rate of descent, and we're aiming for basically what's in the center of our windshield right now. There we are. That little green light means we're on glide slope. Okay.
500.
And let's land it.
400. 300.
A little low.
400. 400. 300. 200. 100. 30. 20. 10.
Throttles back. And you do not want to float it on this runway. Reverse. She's squirrely. Come on. Brakes. Oh. Sigh of relief there, folks. throttle to turn off the... Oh, did I forget a step on the checklist there? I must have, because it's telling me that the air things are on. Okay. Off the runway we go here. Woo! Change these to taxi by right-clicking once. And I'll just make this turn here, and then we'll stop, and we'll take care of the after landing checklist. And as I'm making this turn here, just so you know, I'm bringing the flaps all the way up. Make the turn here, and then we'll stop right here, because I want to actually make sure, since this is a tutorial, I want to make sure that we go through it. And I just want to cover the ILS procedures one more time, since we went through them so fast. So let me turn track IR off here. We have the taxi lights on, so we're good on that. So let's take care of our after landing checklist. Air brakes need to be shut. They never came on, and as far as I can tell, they don't arm, so they're not auto. You can pull the handle back on your own when you land, but that's it. These, I guess, need to be off, and these are one where you left click to turn them on and off. Elevator fail trim. Oh, elevator and aileron trim. Oh, that's because you can see it's trimmed way up right now for our landing, which makes sense actually. Okay, flaps are up. Exterior lights as required. We got the taxi lights on. Pitot heat and vane heat can come off. That's these ones right here. We can turn the windshield heat off as well. Left click all of those. Anti-ice is already off. APR can be disarmed. That's this one down here. Transponder goes to standby. You don't actually turn it on, so I don't know. I mean, it's in standby. I never found a thing to turn the transponder on or off. Maybe I missed a button here or something. This is all radio stuff over here. Is there autocom on or off? And that's the oxygen mic. That's volume. Menu is just this over here, as you see, and you can advance the menu from here, right? So there's that. But I don't actually see anything. They've got a chart thing that doesn't work. None of these buttons work. Yeah, I don't see anything on here for transponder. So, and the other side is identical to this, with the exception of you can change a radio frequency up there. Let's just fly over and check real quick. Make sure I didn't actually miss it, because I don't want to miss anything here. Nope, that's a frequency there, and other than that, it's all the same stuff. So, not really sure. There's nothing you can do as far as the transponder goes. So there we go. Just wanted to make sure we covered that thoroughly. Radar can go to standby. That's this guy here. There was no moisture in the air, so we never got any weather radar returns there. So we can turn traffic off as well. TCAS is off. Air conditioning, we'll leave that on. And that is it. There is no shutdown checklist, but we're going to taxi in here. Let me go ahead and get this bad boy moving. And we'll go through a shutdown anyway, even if we don't have a checklist to do it. And as you can see, this is a really cool little airport. That's a tough landing there too, isn't it? I think I did pretty good on that. Thank you very much. Alright, she's going now. So we'll taxi down here. You know what? There's some cool planes and stuff here, so I'm just going to let you taxi in with me here, just so you can kind of get a look at this airport. And just for the fun of it, I'll probably do a cinematic of the takeoff and landing, because of the areas that we're in. Beautiful area. And yeah, so you actually would have already seen the cinematic. I'm just saying now that I've decided that I'll probably include those, even though I normally wouldn't for necessarily for this type of video, which I'm looking at my clock here. Whew. Just making this video has taken me 2.5 hours just to record it. I don't even know how long it is, but it's going to be pretty long. But I wanted to be thorough with it. It was really very nice of my friend to donate this aircraft to me. I did recently have a comment on another tutorial I did. I deleted the comment because it was a little over the top. The guy was really being a jerk about it. But he felt that I did not do a very thorough job on the tutorial for another aircraft that somebody had donated to me. And I went back and I looked at the video. You know, he made the point, well, you don't know where everything is, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I went back and I looked at the video and I pulled the aircraft documentation up and I went through everything. And the simple reality was I wasn't cutting corners on that. You know, I tried to find all the information I could, but the reality was it was a relatively simple aircraft. And there wasn't a lot to it, and the documentation wasn't so great. So, you know, I apologize that he was so offended by that. But what are you going to do? We're going to go down here just a little bit further. We're not going to park in this spot. You know, but it did prompt me to take a little extra time on this one, to be fair. It prompted me to take a little extra time on this one and make sure that I got as much information as I could so that I wouldn't miss anything. And I don't think I missed anything on this one, but to be honest, I didn't really miss anything on the other one either. You know, I didn't miss anything. There were a couple things I wasn't able to find, and I went back and looked and I still couldn't find them. So just for the record, for the individual who left that comment, it wasn't because I didn't put any time into it, and it certainly wasn't because I didn't care. It simply boiled down to I could not find some of those things, and there were a couple things I found as we went along. And you know what? That's sort of the nature of my videos, because even though it was a tutorial, I like to keep it a little bit real, and that's what happens when we jump into these aircraft, these complex aircraft. Is, you know, sometimes we fumble around a little bit. That's just the reality of it, guys, and you all know that. So, you know, I certainly try to make sure that my tutorials are very in-depth and cover all the information. But ultimately, you know, there's some realism to that. You know, I'm not Mr. Perfect either. And I sure as the heck don't know everything there is to know about every single aircraft in my hangar. Because I'll tell you what, I've got a lot of them. And, you know, you get the point. You get what I'm getting at. You know, you can make all the comments you want. Like I said, I removed the comment because it was over the top. It wasn't just, hey, I don't think you did a very good job here. You know, it was extremely, you know, listen, you want to tell me you think I messed up or you think I could have done better, that's fine, but don't be a complete jerk about it, because I just simply won't tolerate it. So enough said about that. We're pulling into our parking space here anyway. And probably what we do here, I don't know how they really do it in Sedona, but we'd probably taxi up here just a little further, and then they'd push the aircraft back into that parking space for when we're ready to pull out. But we're going to stop right here. I'm done yapping about people making negative comments, and I don't just delete it because it's negative. I delete it, like I said, because it was over the top. There's no need to be a complete jerk about it. Make your point without being a jerk, and I'll be happy to leave your comment up there. Moving on then, again, I don't have, now maybe I missed it. Maybe it was there, maybe I just bypassed it or something. You know, that'll happen sometimes. But shutdown is going to be pretty straightforward. Now, if we wanted to keep power on the aircraft, we would want the APU started, which we would have done after landing. But we don't even want to keep power on the aircraft at this point. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to shut down the engines. So engines 1 and 2, just turn the fuel off. That's going to shut the engines down right there. Now remember, this battery doesn't last very long, so we don't want to spend a lot of time messing with this. Let's make sure all of our lights are off. Well, see, like that one's a right click, and these are left clicks. That one's a right click. That one's a right click. Seat belts can go off. That's a left click. The no smoking sign can stay on. Left and right fuel pumps, those are right clicks. Both of those can come off. The ignitions can come off. Those are left clicks. You see what I'm getting at here? Some are right, some are left. The alternators can come off. Those are left click. And then emergency lights can come off. That's a right click. And then the battery can come off, and that is a right click as well. And that takes us to a cold and dark state. And so here we are in Sedona, Arizona, and that is going to bring us to a conclusion on our full flight tutorial for the Hawker 850. And I'm impressed with myself for actually managing to stop right at the end of that line with the front wheel there. I just noticed that. I wanted to do the view out here from the other side to see those other private aircraft, including that Gulfstream, which is one of my favorite airplanes of all time. Not my favorite, but one of my favorites. But for some reason, the textures are flashing there, and that looked ridiculous. So all of that being said, that is a full flight. Now I meant to go over the ILS approach procedures again, and so I'll just mention it. It's very simple. All you do is you put the frequency in on the tune page of the FMC, put it in VOR 1 and 2, and my brain just went blank. Put it in in nav 1 and nav 2, and then whatever you have your preset at, and I don't think I covered how to change that preset, so but you change the preset the way you do everything else. You're going to click on the line select key, and then you're going to use the menu option to change what is actually the preset there. And so when you set that frequency in your nav radio, and then you switch from FMS to whatever the preset is, VOR 1 or VOR 2, it doesn't matter as long as you have it in both nav radios, and then press the approach button and it'll fly the ILS. It's as simple as that. And that's it. That's everything for this particular aircraft. It is actually a lot of fun to fly. It's a little squirrely on the runway, but overall it's not very difficult to fly, and it is quite fun. So I thank you once again, Kino, for such a generous donation, and I hope that this tutorial has given you all the information you need to be proficient in flying this aircraft. And if for any reason any of you have any questions about this aircraft that for some reason I did not cover, please put it down in the comments section, and I'll be more than happy to address that either through comments, or if necessary I can make a short add-on video or something like that if it's that complex. But I'm pretty sure I covered just about everything. So I think we're good to go, and that means we're done. So as always, ladies and gentlemen, keep the blue side up unless otherwise instructed by ATC. You folks have a fantastic day.